All right, recap time again. It's been a couple weeks, so time to get into the recap action. I guess we could roll it back to week 4 then. Did kind of cheese over that one. All right, so week number 4, starting off with this one. 2 races, Snowback Pines MX and Montana Trails Raceway. So MX and Terrain Oval. Starting off with the MX, this actually was a really good race. The battles on this one for an MX race and then like being as big of a track as it was, probably some of the best that we've seen in one of these types of races in a while. So yeah, this one is definitely worth watching. In the end, Detail taking the win in this one, ended up taking second, Real Deal third, and then Slaunch fourth, and Canby fifth, rounding out the top 5. But yeah, definitely a one worth taking a look at because the lead battle was actually really close. The podium through the top 5, and then like all throughout the pack, it's like almost like everybody had someone they're battling with basically the entire race. So always fun to watch these types of tracks when you actually have that. Definitely had that on this one. And then second race, Montana Trails. This one actually not as caution heavy as I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be pretty caution heavy because it's a hard track to pass on and you have to get like pretty risky to make those moves happen. So I kind of thought there'd be more cautions because of that. And there were some cautions, but it was a pretty fair amount. There really wasn't that many. There's some really good green flag runs as well. So I'd say this was a decent race as well. It had the potential to be a total cheese fest, and it really wasn't. So that was nice to see. And it was an interesting track from Blake here too, because it's a very tricky terrain oval as far as these tracks go, and like maintaining your momentum on this one. There's a few different lines you could take, especially in 3 and 4. So that made for pretty interesting stuff on this one. In the end, I ended up taking the win on this one. I pod second again on a reach terrain oval, so that was pretty crazy. Really close finish with Blake, who took third. Yeah, their finish definitely worth taking a look at. They had a really exciting end of the race battle, and then Canby in the top 5 again, 4th, and Soul 5th. All right, so going over the overall, I ended up taking the overall 32 points detailed, and Canby second and third with 25 apiece. And then Slaunch and iPod 4th and 5th with 23 and 22. I don't know why I said it like that. 22. Soul and Elite 6th and 7th with 21. Blake 8th with 20. Very close in a lot of these. Real Deal 9th with 19. Roman 10th with 17. Hunter 11th with 15. Squeezy 12th with 14. It's always hard, man. This is always like, whenever this is the first thing I record, it's like I've never talked before, but it's just for the day, you know? Anyways, okay, so the next week, week 5, Chiron Valley Rally Race number 13. So this time a pure terrain and an RX. So obviously complete switch up from the previous week. First race, Chiron Valley. The heat races set us up for potentially a very interesting race in this one. And it was. This was actually a really good race too. I ended up taking the win on this one because I was able to get through the pack and get away from the pack early on and build a big gap. But the rest of the pack kept going like the entire race, and it was actually a really tight pack from 2nd all the way to like 7th or 8th for a while, actually. Like that went pretty much all the way to the end. So yeah, really good aggressive pack racing on this one. Cool track from Opix here, very long pure terrain track, and overall another very good race. So yeah, I ended up taking the win for this one. Detail 2nd, Roman 3rd, 4th Slaunch, and Hunter with a top 5 here, 5th. And then rally race number 13, you know, obviously get the invert for this one, so that's going to switch things up, but it is a rally cross race, so there are going to be the jokers, so, you know, that can account for that a little bit, ease the chaos maybe a little bit, but maybe also play into it. You don't really know how it's going to go. And yeah, this one was really fun to race and really fun to watch as well. Overall, across both races, just a really solid night. This might have been, like, just on average, the overall best race night yet, which is really nice to say. You know, almost halfway through the series, it's really nice that we're saying that at this point, because usually things I feel like kind of taper off, but I feel like it's kind of the opposite. I feel like we're kind of hitting a stride in the middle, which is cool. But yeah, not saying that you know, either of these were particularly the best race of the season. One of them might have been, I don't know. But like the average of both of them was like really good, and this is a really good race night to watch back. But yeah, so the RX race, Detail really good drive through the pack and had to make a late race pass on me, and he was able to do it and able to take the win that way. So it was a really clutch win. Really good speed on this track, takes the win. I ended up taking second. iPod with another reach podium and not a terrain oval this time. Kind of crazy. Roman fourth, and Camby rounding out the top 5. Another top 5 for Camby. So the overall, Detail and I ended up getting the tiebreaker, but we both score 32 points for the overall on the night. Roman third with 27, iPod fourth with 24, Slaunch fifth with 23. Camby and Hunter 6th and 7th with 21 apiece. Soul 8th with 19. Armada 9th as well with 19. And Blake 10th with 14. Okay, so let's go over to the points, and we obviously gonna have more to talk about since it's been a while, and we're getting to the point in the season where things are starting to really develop. Okay, so I still have the points lead right now. Obviously, we scored the same amount of points in that last race. 6-point gap over Detail, but still very close. And Detail does have that win advantage, which when mulligans come into play, having more wins, I think, is a really nice advantage to have. So yeah, definitely still a really interesting and close lead battle at the moment. Definitely, hope that continues. Slaunch still in third, although Roman is making a good bid for that. Roman is starting to warm up to the season a little bit. Obviously, Slaunch had a really hot start. Roman had a very slow start, but now Slaunch has slowed down a bit. Roman is starting to pick it up a bit. It's now to be interesting to see in the coming weeks, how does Slaunch respond to that? Because now it's a pretty legitimate battle for third, right? In the beginning, it looked like Slaunch really had a nice stronghold on it, and he did. But now it's pretty legit. It's pretty close, and Roman's starting to work his way into that battle. And then iPod and Camby, this is an interesting one to talk about too. iPod and Camby, 5th and 6th, they are making it into the grand final on points right now. iPod is legitimately having a pretty solid season. iPod is tied for the third most podiums on the season right now. And that's kind of the thing, though, is that I think, some of the other drivers are a little more consistent. Like, all of iPod's top 5s are those podium finishes, right? Whereas, like, Slaunch has 3 podiums, but Slaunch also has 6 top 5s. So that's kind of the difference right now. But the nice thing going for iPod is that when iPod is fast, he's actually, like, really fast and can compete for a podium and maybe a win at some point, too. The only downside for iPod is that I do think, we'll take a look at it as well. I do think the second half of the schedule does have a significant drop-off in the amount of reach. I feel like there's a lot of reach early in the schedule, which I think is what iPod really prefers, and I feel like there's quite a bit less in the second half. We'll have to check and make sure that's true. I believe it's true. So that's the downside for iPod, but, on the bright side, really good position in points, and 3 wildcard points, too, in case something happens and he ends up dropping out. Having those 3 wildcard points is really nice, too. So yeah, really good position, and then Camby very close to iPod in points. You could say, similar things. Camby getting a win on the board, having those 3 wildcard points. Yes, Camby is in that final crucial position, but if Camby drops out, 3 wildcard points is a really good amount right now. So could still be comfortable with that, but right now, Camby's doing it on points, having some really consistent results. Again, put a win on the board this season, put an overall top 3 on the board, many top 5s. Camby's had a very, very solid season so far. So yeah, iPod and Camby. This is I think these 4 are probably like locks to make it into the grand final on points. And then this is where it gets interesting, because iPod and Camby are doing really well right now. I think one of iPod and Camby will for sure make it through. I don't think both of them will drop out, but I do think there's a possibility that maybe one of them could be shoved out on points. And the 2 drivers that could do that, I think, are Soul and Hunter. I think are Soul and Hunter, specifically Soul, because Soul has been in that top 6 in points and has made it there this year. He's been really strong this year. Obviously, he's off to a really rough start, but I have to believe that Soul will turn that around at some point. And then when he turns it around, I'm curious to see if Soul can put on a good enough turnaround to where he can make it in, because Soul doesn't have any wildcard points right now. His wildcard point situation is not going very well. So if he wants to make it in, at least right now, it's looking like it's probably going to have to be a get in on points route. So he's going to have to really step up the consistency and start to really put in some good finishes. But I do think it's doable. 15 points back from Camby. Yes, it seems like a lot. And yes, it is a lot. It's a decent amount. But it's not insurmountable by any means. And there's still a lot of time left. So if anything, yeah, I would say this is a perfect point in the season for Soul to be like, all right, let's lock it in. Let's figure out some good tracks, really work on those, get some good results on those, and start to bite into that deficit. But yeah, I think the fact that Soul has had as rough of a season as he has, like he hasn't even put a podium on the board yet, the fact that he is where he is in points is kind of crazy. So if I were him, I would look at it that way, right? Like, this has been a really rough season. You're still on the cusp of making it in on points, and you are having a really rough season. So that I would take that as a positive, right? Like, for how bad it's felt for him, he probably feels like he's like right here, but he's not. He's right here, right on the outside looking in. So yeah, I'll be curious to follow Soul. And then Hunter is the other driver. I think Hunter is less likely to make it in on points, but I still include Hunter in that conversation because Hunter is actually having a pretty decent season. And I think there is a legitimate possibility that Hunter could do it. Like, I would definitely give Soul a higher chance, but I would absolutely not count Hunter out yet, because this is, like, especially compared to a short track showdown season, it's just been a lot better. It's been a lot better. So I think it's like way too early to count him out. But the two current wildcard holders are Blake and Real Deal. Real Deal has 3 wildcard points. He's holding on to that advantage right now. Again, if iPod or Camby gets knocked out, they both have 3. If both of them get knocked out, if some of these guys pick up more wildcard points, things could get interesting. But right now, he's holding on to it with those 3. But so far this season, it seems a little more likely. Those wildcard points seem to be coming in a little bit more. So I don't know if 3 will be enough. Come later in the season. We'll have to wait and see. And then Vulcan has 2. So Vulcan needs to show back up to some weeks and get involved, because Vulcan was actually having a really good season before he stopped showing up. I guess he felt like he was doing bad, but if you look at the average points per moto, he actually has the 5th best on the board. If he kept showing up based off his average, if he kept up his average, Vulcan would be in the top 6 on points right now. He wouldn't even need those wildcard points. That would just be a bonus. So we'll have to see what Vulcan does. If Vulcan starts showing up again, is it too late for him to make it on points? With mulligans, no. I honestly don't think it is. But he would probably need to lock in a lot more not having those mulligans to rely on. But yeah, kind of a shame that Vulcan hasn't shown up for the last couple weeks, because it was a way better season. Vulcan was having a way better season than he has this year. But I guess he didn't feel that way. I don't know, but the stats don't really reflect that. Or my bad. It was Real Deal with the good average finish. My bad. I read that wrong. My bad. That being said, Vulcan's is still better than the 3 guys in front of him, and would still put him like right behind Camby and iPod. So he would still, like, where Soul is right now, if Vulcan kept showing up, he would likely be where Soul is, even closer to Camby and iPod. So my bad. I misread that. It was Real Deal. But the point kind of still stands. I mean, I guess Turkey has a better one, but it's got 2 motos. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the point still stands. But anyways, moving on from that, we'll take a quick peek, close out this episode at the division-specific points. No surprise here, Detail leading Pure Terrain, but with me getting that win on the board at Chiron does make it a little bit closer. Terrain Oval, I'm having a really nice season there. iPod is in second there right now. iPod's having a great Terrain Oval series at the moment. And it's really competitive. It's really competitive between these positions. We'll have to see how Terrain Oval turns out. And then MX, obviously Detail off to a really hot start there. He has really nice control there. And then RX. This might surprise some people. RX is actually the most competitive. RX is actually the most competitive right now. 3 different races, 3 different winners, and 3 different points leaders after those wins. And I'm currently leading the points, and I don't have one in RX yet. So, yeah, RX has been kind of crazy. If you look at this RX battle, 6th to 1st is an 8-point gap. That's pretty good. And again, 3 different winners. Yeah, the RX division title is actually very spicy, and I don't think a lot of people probably would have predicted for that one to be like the closest one. I honestly kind of thought it would be this one. That was my hot take. I think I was pretty wrong on that. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, maybe like one of these 2. But no, RX has actually been the most competitive so far. We'll have to see if that continues, but that's been kind of cool to see. But there you go. Yeah, again, there's your update on the points. Again, top 6. These guys are making it in right now. I think Soul and Hunter are guys you need to keep an eye out on to make it in on points. And then as far as the wild card goes, obviously Blake and Real Deal are in right now. But if Vulcan starts showing up again, I think Vulcan's an interesting wild card too. I think you can't really count Vulcan out, because I think he could really make some waves already having 2 on the board and having really good MX performances when he shows up. So we'll have to see, you know, if he comes back and if he can make things even more interesting. Okay, so closing it out, looking at the schedule, we are about to hit the halfway point. So after this week is over, it's not the halfway point in terms of, you know, the race number, but in terms of weeks, we're hitting the halfway point of the season. So that's pretty crazy. It's going to be Halloween Spooky Night. I don't think we're doing anything special for that, but there you go. But next week it's going to be Cairns Raceway, which is a H4 train oval. So we're going back to an H4 train oval after doing multiple reach ones. And this one's kind of a return to normalcy, I would say. Like, the last 2 train ovals have been kind of crazy in different ways. But I think this one's like a very, just like a very, like, normal train oval compared to what we've been racing on. But it's still on the shorter side, and it actually has some throttle control management. So I'm curious to see how Cairns races. I'm very curious to see how it goes. I hope it's good. I hope it's good. And then after that, we'll be racing our 3rd MX of the season, Copperhead Canyon Nationals, one made by Slaunch that we raced in the past. And this one is crazy. This one is crazy. It has some crazy lines. It absolutely has that Nationals feel. I'm really excited to race on this one. I think the race is going to be an absolute cheese fest of people going down and making crazy moves. And, you know, maybe some of them work, maybe some of them don't. I don't know. I think we're set for a pretty good week this week. These are 2 very different types of tracks, but I think they'll actually go pretty well together, and I think this will be a really fun race night. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then the week after that, Barrel Bluffs, H4 Pure Terrain, and Sebring Short. I just wanted to, you know, note this quickly. This is the one that I was going to do earlier in the season. Took some extra time on it. This one will be ready to go. And it will be our first hog race. I don't know how many hog races we're going to have on the schedule, but it'll be our first hog race. So I just wanted to announce that, or, you know, I guess it was technically already announced, but make that clear, add that in here. So prepare for that, right? This has been mostly a goose series, and it is mostly a goose series. But we are having a hog race with Sebring Short when that comes into play in a couple weeks. So that'll be interesting to see. Because, again, like Short Track Showdown, we pretty consistently had a little bit of hog thrown in here or there, but this season we haven't, so it's almost going to make it even more interesting and important when they do show up. So just wanted to point that one out. All right, well, that's all I have left for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Yeah, season really starting to hit a good point. So again, hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you the next week.